5. We're on day 5 of our journey on management. I did just want to circle back. Yesterday, we did get to practice receiving and giving feedback. And so, if you had any thoughts or anything you want to share about how that felt for you, now that you've had time to process a little bit, anything that made you aha about yourself, just please share with us. This is a group session. But I did want to share that if you are interested or would like to get more just additional tips on giving feedback, I'm going to put it in the chat. There is Sherry Harley. She is the CEO of Candid Culture, and she has great little videos on like how to give feedback, how to have difficult conversations, how to give performance review evaluations. They're very short little like 2 or 3 minute videos, but they're so helpful to just hear from others about that dialogue and how it needs to happen. So real quick, if you can update your name tags, that'll be awesome. And then Sumar says it was an empowering exercise, takes bravery and courage to give feedback and receiving it. Yes, it does. We need to feel comfortable, because at the end of the day, we're not going out there to hurt anyone. Nothing that we do for the most part is done intentionally. So we should be open to receiving that feedback and also giving if we're doing it with also great intentions, right? We all want everyone around us to be better, do better, and excel at their jobs. So we need to approach it from that mindset, okay? So do check her out. The videos are very like short and sweet, and they're very helpful if you need a little bit more of that information. Talking about feedback, I asked you 2 sessions ago to give us some feedback on how it's going, that happy and sad face. So I wanted to go over, we had a lot of happy faces, which is great. That means the way we designed the workshop really is resonating, the content, the timing of the breakout rooms and all that. There were some areas that we could improve, I guess, making the workbook editable and used on an online version versus just a hard copy. So thank you for that. We are going to work on it. The other was spending a little more time on unconscious bias, or just being inclusive, or just being more diverse, and how to create that diversity in your teams. Like I mentioned before, that training alone is like a week's worth training, just that topic, because it has so many layers to it. So we kind of scratched the surface a little bit, but there are definitely a lot of other courses that can really dive deep into those areas. So I apologize for us not really getting into the weeds of that, but it could really take us the whole week to just cover all those topics. But I appreciate the feedback. The other one is would have liked to go into more detail in using the situational leadership model. We do explain the model, and then we do refer back to the model. If you have any more questions, we do have some resources that we could share, or you can dive in. But it's a very straightforward model in the sense of how we all should move through it. And that's why we keep referring to that process, right? And how we build not only our skill set, our team's skill set, and also it's a lot of information to process. It is. It is. So we try to give you time to also reflect, apply, and then we cap it off 90 minutes. So hopefully you have some time to just process what we covered through the day, right? So it is a lot of content. This actually used to be a lot heavier content, and we've actually tried to prioritize the pieces that we keep hearing everyone wanted some feedback on. So yes, please keep them coming. If there's anything that we could do better, anything that's working, we appreciate that. And in the spirit of feedback, this is what it's about. You should always feel comfortable also asking your teams for feedback about you and your performance and how it's working, and how you're supporting them and what you could be doing differently. So don't be afraid of some good constructive feedback. Awesome. So we are going to get started today. Let me share my screen. Perfect. Great. So like I mentioned yesterday, we talked about motivation, active listening, and we practiced giving and receiving feedback. And today we'll be turning our attention to working with people and managing the individual as an individual. All right. So we've covered getting your head in the game, your role as a manager, managing in the middle, understanding yourself and others. And now we're going to be working on working with people. Alamelo wanted to offer a resource on unconscious bias. Humantum has a tie-up with eCornell that offers some training on unconscious bias. Thank you, Lamelo. We will work on getting that link so you can look up some more information. Awesome, thank you. So the objectives for today are to explore the concepts of trust through competence and benevolence. Also to understand when, how, and why to use objectives as a manager. And then to explore good practice in delegation. We need a lot of support sometimes in our delegation skills. And also recognize models for coaching and their applications. So we're not only supervising and being leaders of our teams or our staff, but we also need to do some level of coaching or acknowledge when coaching might be necessary, not only for ourselves, but for our teams, okay? I like this little pyramid exercise. At the core of any good manager is the presence of trust and confidence, right? So the author Peter Schultz wrote a book, The Leader's Handbook, which describes the mutual trust and respect between a manager and staff and benevolence. He believed in creating workplaces that produced results for customers and all the stakeholders. And providing joy in work is a key part of creating successful organizations. So this chart shows the extent to which I, your staff member, believe you're competent and capable and you will do what you say you will do. And the degree to which I believe you care about me and will back me up. So where these two are high, then there's trust. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. So aptitude is where I believe you're competent. I respect you. You don't make mistakes. This for knowing it all. So you have a level of technical expertise. You could simply be case by case. You know, if you have an error, you admit to it, but it's because you're the professional and you have your areas of expertise. You're capable to do your job. The benevolence piece is when I believe you care about me and you have my back, you have my best interest in mind, and I feel warm and affection towards you. But where these are both low, then there's distrust. If I as a manager don't think you can do the job, and I don't think you have my best interest or the team's best interest in mind, I'm not gonna be able to trust you, right? So I can't trust that you could do the work the way that it should be. I can't trust that you would do it for the greater good. So that's where the difference is, okay? And of course, these can apply from a manager's perspective about the staff member, or it could also be about your team or your own staff members. So as from a manager's perspective is I trust a staff member if I see their competence and I believe they care about me and the team. I respect them if they have the competence, right? They were hired a professional, you can delegate and have them do their job. And then I feel affection towards them if they demonstrate a care and concern for the team as a whole. And both of these absent is distrust. So what can we do to nurture this from our reports and teams? So how can we do this in a remote work environment, right? We're just adding this layer to this already challenging situation or dynamic sometimes that we even had in our offices. So we're going to work through this for a little bit. We're going to do an activity. We're going to have 8 minutes And in your groups, I would like for you to work on page 26 of the workbook. And you're going to talk about what do your staff need from you to feel like they trust you? And also what is different in how you give and receive trust now than 3 years ago before the pandemic? Very specific. That's what's happened in 3 years, the whole pandemic. So we're going to get into groups of about 4 or 5, and let's have these conversations. And again, you can take notes and use page 26 of your workbook. We're going to let one more person in that's waiting in the waiting room. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Awesome. Marinda will give me the thumbs up. And we're ready. We'll see you in 8 minutes.
Perfect. Here you go.
Perfect. Yep. Wonderful. So how was that? You know we're going to debrief, right? So there's no question about that. How was it? How was that reflection process? Because I'm sure some of us didn't even realize, you know, some of the things that we need to do to help our staff build trust with our staff, but also how we've changed in the way we give trust. So who wants to share with us that moment of reflection? Oh, don't be shy. All right, Donald. Way to break the ice. Let's do this.
Yeah, I can go. So it was a helpful conversation. Also helped me to kind of just think through what has changed between now and how it was 3 years ago. So from my group, just to quickly share some of the things that we discussed. Number one, it's kind of very important to let your team know that you care about them. You know, as a person, now that people are working from home in different settings, different environments, just being honest, being responsive and available on Teams video calls. So kind of just more communication now versus how it was 3 years ago when you would just sit in a physical space together and you're able to see them working. But now, without that, just being able to still assure them that you still trust them, you care about them, and you can let them like do their work and kind of their deliverables as well. We talked about, you know, being flexible with time zones, for instance, and just kind of reiterating that, you know, working on schedules that work for everyone, and just again letting people know that, letting your team know that you've got them, you've got their back, you know, particularly when it comes to like things that are kind of like putting them at risk, or the work that your team is doing is putting your team at risk, but not kind of throwing them under the bus, but, you know, supporting them. So kind of in a nutshell, that's what some of the things that we discussed in our group.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's a great point, because remote work, the pandemic has really shifted even how we, you know, before remote work had to be earned, right? They had to prove to you, they had to show you that they were going to be reliable, they were going to do their work. And you assumed also that because they showed up to work in an office, so they were being productive and they were doing their work, right? So all of that is shifting the way we've always been programmed to think about what productivity looks like, or what people doing their job looks like, right? So now we have to shift this. And so now, how do you trust and build that trust? It's still earned, but like you said, having that open dialogue, right? And understanding everybody's work style and communication style, having those check-ins, those intentional moments of connection and communication are critical to building trust in this new setting, in this hybrid setting. I was actually reading an article today in the Harvard Business Review. Great resource if you can all sign up. They have great articles about remote work, especially, and how to help our staff and our teams create cohesiveness during this type of schedule, type of structure. And basically, it was saying that we as leaders have to set the tone and let everyone know what the expectations are. That it's okay to clock off or turn off notifications, turn off anything that may get us to look at our phones or our email once we're done with our work time. So that's why it's very important that we as leaders set those boundaries for ourselves and allow others to know that they can do the same as well. So we carry a lot with that, right? Again, it's if we have mismatched expectations, that's how it also leads to distrust. And that's why you need to have this clear communication. Okay, so when you don't get response for hours, people start, because of the way we were programmed before about how people work, we would think, oh, they're out grocery shopping, right? That's what we would think. They're not getting back to me. But we're not stopping to think that they also have their own responsibilities. Maybe they're in meetings, or maybe they're doing other things. So what is that level of trust that you need to create and set? And what are those boundaries? Okay. So there is a free version of the Leader's Handbook. It's available for free in the Curator platform. I am going to share the link. It is a PDF. It's a 400+ page PDF, but it's really a great resource. So definitely check them out and see what you can do with that. Okay. So one of the other things that we want to talk about is the way we are also setting objectives, right? Again, we're clarifying roles and responsibilities. We're trying to make sure everyone's clear and on the same page of what people should expect from you, and also what you expect from them. So objectives are a way to manage expectations and build trust. And it helps make sure that both you and your team or your staff member or your supervisor as well are all on the same page about what needs to happen. Your direct report builds trust every time they achieve what they say they will. You build trust every time you don't micromanage, and every time you give a stretch assignment, signaling that you believe that they can do it. So when you let them try new things as a team member or as a staff, that builds trust. Okay. And when done right, you can also increase motivation because it helps align your staff goals and work with your goals and work, and then the organization's goals. So we're all intertwined here. Okay. So when and how do we do it? So there are a variety of goal setting frameworks. There's KPI, which are the key performance indicators. There's the management by objectives. There's objectives and key results, the KORs, and also there's SMART goals. So we will focus today on an adapted model of SMART goals. We're going to talk about smarter goals, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Awesome. So everybody's heard of SMART goals, right? Those are specific, action-based, realistic, and timely. So the new adaptation adds evaluate and revise. Benchmarks, it evolves. Maybe you're setting newer benchmarks once you've met your first deliverable. So that's why they're considered smarter, because they want you to go back, evaluate where you are, evaluate if any changes need to be made, and then revise them accordingly. So again, not enough to just focus on the characteristics of your goal, like being specific and timely, but also how you interact with these goals by evaluating and revising them. So working smarter, it's evaluating and revising go hand in hand, and evaluating how it's going. What's working, what's not working, are the new conditions that we're under making it realistic for this goal now to be achieved? And then do goals need to be revised? Okay, so for example, people that had goals about attend professional development or attend and present at conferences, well, they couldn't do that during the pandemic when we all shut down. Now we do it because a lot of the conferences have adjusted. That's why you need to reevaluate the goals. Okay, so smarter is the way for managers and direct reports to answer the question, how do I know what success looks like? And this is even more important in remote work environment. So you come together, you identify and agree on the goals, then you monitor, you review, you explain, you see how it's all being worked on and linked on, and then you discuss any changes to the skills, any changes to the behavior, any additional support. and it's a constant dialogue, a constant framework. Okay. Does anybody use something similar to have those performance evaluations or goal setting? Yeah, you can raise your hand or give me a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. Also, I'm gonna take my headphones off real quick. They're also, can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up, okay. So there are also other ways that managers can really just track performance. You don't have to get very sophisticated with these models or these approaches with KPI and smarter goals. You can literally just write down a list of goals. What are some metrics? What are some objectives? And that's okay. So don't get caught up in the process, as long as you're using something to set clear expectations and what does achievement look like. That's really what it's all about. So don't get caught up on the method. Some organizations already have a structure, especially for performance evaluations. You can use that. And if they don't have any, then you can create your own, but definitely set something, again, in writing that keeps everything clear and open with your staff and your team. Any questions or thoughts about this topic? Awesome. So again, definitely use something. All right. So now we're going to change it up a bit. We're going to talk now about delegation, because again, it's all also tied to setting goals. If your staff person or you identify that you want them to learn a new skill set, delegation is a way for you to help them achieve that. Okay, so during the course of our careers, we each have many tasks delegated to us, and we probably delegated tasks to others. Some of us are more comfortable than others on how and what we need to delegate. So know how it feels, what's going well, or perhaps what's gone not so well, right? About how things are being delegated, but also what the purpose is of that delegation. Are you just delegating work you don't want to do? Or are you delegating work that can help another staff member that requires their expertise, and they're going to be helpful to the process and the team? All right, so we're going to get in groups for 8 minutes. And in your groups on page 28 of your workbook, you're going to work on a list, the do's and the don'ts of delegating. So what things you must do to delegate well, and then what are some things you should not do when delegating. All right. And then we will be reporting back after. So be ready to speak and talk and get the conversation flowing. All right. So I will see you. If Miranda gives me the thumbs up, I will see you in 8 minutes.
Okay, there you go.
And we're back. So how was that? Who wants to share some of the don'ts on their list? Go ahead, Allison. Thank you.
Yeah, our group had a lot of really interesting comments on the whole process, but one of the things, Samar had an excellent comment that I wanted to share out with everyone, which is in terms of basically don't over edit their document unnecessarily. So if they come back to you with something, if you delegate a task to them and they come back to you with something that is different from how you would have done it, don't over edit, because that can belittle their work and make them feel like they are not open to coming up with new ideas or have innovations. And I thought that was a really, really good thing to keep in mind.
Who would have thought that from editing, right? So don't suppress their voice, just edit the grammar. That's pretty much it, right? We all read something, we're like, I wouldn't say it that way, I'll say it this way, but that's not the point. You're just editing for grammar and make sure it's accurate and it flows and makes sense, not the tone or the voice that the document has. Wow, thank you. Who would have thought that? But it does. It could lead to that, definitely. All right, Deborah, and then Brian.
We did a lot of, so on the don't column, we spent a lot of time we all agreed don't micromanage, but we sort of spent a lot of time fleshing out what that means and what that actually looks like, and the challenges, perhaps some ways that we can try to avoid micromanaging, And then at the end, really appreciated something that we all resonated with was once you've made a decision on a task that you've delegated, once you have delegated a task, don't make a decision on that task. If you've given that task to someone, then they're the ones to make the decision.
Oh, that's good. So let me ask you this. What did you all define as micromanagement as?
Oh goodness, I don't know that we had a definition. Chime in,
Okay,
anybody.
so what are some
if you disagree with
things?
me? The balance between instruction and then too much instruction, support versus intrusiveness is a fine line. We talked about the nuances of that change depending on the culture, depending on the nature of the relationship. Oh goodness, what else? Help me, guys, if there was something else on.
Well, Felix is saying not too prescriptive tasks or micromanage. Yeah. So, and I want to say this because actually I was part of a meeting yesterday. We were talking about someone was saying they felt micromanaged. So we were like, okay, can we define micromanagement? What is happening that you're feeling that way? Because we all think, oh, micromanagement is someone hovering over you, but that has different levels for different people, right? Like Felix was saying, is it just giving very prescriptive tasks, right? Telling them exactly how to do it without allowing that creativity to flow? Is it also because you're being held accountable? And then people are perceiving, why are you asking me for updates? You're micromanaging me. But it's not. There's a difference between accountability and holding someone accountable and then hovering over them and being on top of them and asking them for like play-by-play updates of what's happening and where they're at. So just know that there is a difference and always ask, what is micromanaging to you? And to give you examples, right? We're going back to that situation. We're trying to understand the behavior and the why. All right. Awesome. Great. Thank you for that, Deborah. Brian.
Yeah, we also talked about over delegating, where you practically don't do the work, you just delegate everything. You're not supposed to do that.
Yes, over delegating is just as bad because you're delegating everything, right? Even the things you don't want to do. And people know what you don't like to do. Then now you're passing it down to them. So be sure again to be intentional. Yes, some words like Brian, truth. Yes, for sure. So be intentional about what you're trying to delegate. Don't delegate things that you yourself are not willing to do. Right? So it has to be an intentional delegation as well. So I'm going to share my screen real quick to give you some little tips here that we've put together. These are just some suggestions. So communicate fully to all concerned individuals or whoever is part of that process. Be specific about the task and the outcome you're requiring. But again, not on how that's going to be accomplished, right? So there's a difference. If you're looking for a specific product, if you're looking for a specific visual way of seeing data, let's say, be specific about that, graphs, pies, whatever you want, but you're not micromanaging or being prescriptive on the process for them to achieve that. Identify any learning or development needs. At the end of the day, that's what delegation is also about. We're helping build someone else's capacity to hopefully eventually take that off of your plate or maybe allow them to just grow into a different role. Okay. Do not delegate tasks you yourself don't like. People know. So make sure it's all tied to the growth and the betterment of the team. And thinking everything should be delegated is also a no-no. Exactly what Brian said. So then why are you there? Why is the organization paying you if all your work is done by somebody else? And also that can really overload somebody else's workload in the team, and then it's not equitable, right? So Alexis says, unpopular opinion, but I think you can delegate things you don't want to do and still be professional and supportive. Oh, 100%. But don't start saying, I'm delegating this to you because I don't want to do it. You can definitely code it and see the need of it being delegate it and see how it links up with everything else. But I have supervisors that would say, you know, I don't want to do that. You're better suited for it. Take this. Yeah, that's not how we want to begin that conversation of delegation. So yes, you could definitely delegate things, Alexis. We just don't have to be open about, I really don't like that. You could do it. Because sometimes it might make them feel less than. I think you're too good enough for them. And not, you know, poor practice is that you're not holding them accountable. So if you're not going to manage the deadline by which you ask them to have a product, then that's poor delegation as well. And then holding them accountable, meeting those deadlines is not micromanaging. So make sure that there's a balance to that as well. All right. So this is one little quote that I like. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. So really look at some things, especially now if you're feeling like you have a lot going on. Look, managing a staff and administrative tasks also take up time. A lot of our time, doesn't account for that, right? It's only the work that we're doing, the technical work that we're doing. So really do carve out some of these lists of things that you can parcel out and delegate to the team members in your team who has the right skill set, who likes to do certain tasks that you maybe that's not your favorite thing to do, but they're good at it and they like to do it and it builds on their skill set, right? So really create a list of all the things that you can delegate to your team to help you ease some of the workload, to open that space, to carving out time to have these reflection sessions about how to lead your team or what are you thinking about or going through to make you be a better manager. Okay. Awesome. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about, again, all tied to communication, expectations, and goal setting, professional development, and coaching. So in the chat, apart from this workshop, what was the last training or development you had? Put the name of the training on the chat for me. So what was that training or development workshop you had before this one? Did you learn a system at your organization? Did you take a time management course? Adaptability training. Oh, that sounds cool. Project program management. Awesome, Taylor. Great. Not a lot. I know it's hard, especially when you get to a certain level of at your job, there's not a lot of, or we don't see as a lot of opportunities to take professional development, but there's always ways for us to grow. Various internal trainings, such as contracting, sub-award training, pricing strategies, LinkedIn class on meeting facilitations, and lots of Bream Brown podcasts on daring leadership. Oh, I like that. I'm gonna have to check them out. Learned on DHIS2, which is a database being used by Ministry of Health on health data management, procurement, and sub-award training. Perfect. So a lot of the times we also think the trainings we take just to do our job, like the databases and things like that, are not necessarily professional development, but they can be, and sometimes they are, because if you, depending on the data or the software, is if you're change jobs or you start working with a partner that has that kind of software, uses that software, you already have that knowledge, right? So everything we learn honestly does build our skill set, even though we may not see it. So that contracting workshop, whoever took that contracting training, it's gonna pay off, don't worry. They will get you to write those business proposals. So everything is 70-20-10 rule. It shows us that individuals tend to learn 70% of their knowledge from challenging experiences and assignments, 20% from developmental relationships, and 10% from coursework and training. So this is a model by the Center for Creative Leadership, and that's basically what they found through their studies and information. So remember that we do have to carve out, no matter how high we are in our job, to do things that allow us to grow professionally, learn a new skill, master a skill, whatever it may be. And we sometimes may have to find those opportunities for ourselves, right? So listening to a podcast, reading the articles by the Harvard Business Review, we always have to continue to teach and grow and expand our knowledge. It's very helpful. And Marinda put the link to the 70-20-10 resource for additional information that we have on their curator platform under today's workshop as well. So development comes from what you do with what you've learned. So from a training, so you need time to reflect, set goals, and get to know the people in your team to best apply everything that you've learned. So now I'm going to ask you another question. In the chat, tell me, I learn by. How do you learn? I'll stop sharing so I can see all your faces and your answers. I learn by. Being mentored, instructed, doing it myself, so hands-on, on the job, previous examples, a lot of hands-on. Perfect. Yeah, a lot of hands-on. So just remember too that, I'm gonna share my screen real quick. We all get trained on something, but like an iceberg, this only represents what it's above the waterline, right? The richness of the development really lies beneath the surface and populate that iceberg. So again, it's applying what we learn and use it so then it gets ingrained in us and we could actually do this in a more natural way. Okay, so the way you learn is really how you have to find different ways. Is it a podcast? Is it really just jumping in and rolling up your sleeves and taking on a new task? Is it, teaching someone else how to do something? So there's various ways to go about this, okay? You also need to identify how your team learns and keep that in mind as you are training them or having them take professional development opportunities. Not everyone, learns the same way. So you're training them to do something technical. It might take them a little longer than someone else. Maybe they need to have an overview and then have actual hands-on experience, and then you have a follow-up training session with them, right? Once they've had a time to know what they're going to be doing it themselves, and then you have a follow-up. So you have to recognize how your staff and your team are learning. So individual development is super important in order for you to know how to continue to motivate your team, help them achieve their own goals, because we're also there to help them grow as individuals, just like we're part of helping ourselves grow. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. So one of the things is about your planning framework. So this is very important as well, because grow as well. Because then if not, they're gonna lose interest and eventually leave. And sometimes it's okay. Maybe sometimes you yourself or your staff outgrow the organization or the work, and that's perfectly okay. But most of the time we can provide professional development opportunities within the same work that we're doing. It's just seeing someone in a different light and not putting them in a box, right? You were hired to do X and that's all you do, without having understanding with what other skill sets do they have, what other areas of interest do they have, and expanding that box, right? So that's also, I like to say, that's what happens with very large organizations. Sometimes you're hired to do one task and there's staff to do everything else. So there are not a lot of fires to put out where you need to learn or engage in new skills. But the opposite happens And you may be okay with that setting. That's perfect, right? You stick to your lane. That's all you need to worry about. But then you go to smaller organizations where there are short staff, they need all hands on deck, and you're learning all sorts of things, and sometimes a little overburdened because they have a need. So also realize what type of work setting you like. If you're constantly wanting to learn, try new things, know that about yourself and know that about your team, because that's going to help you know how to delegate some of the tasks and also how to help set some goals for them as well. Okay. So know what makes people tick, know what makes you tick, and how do you want to grow professionally, and how does your team want to grow professionally? That's part of the goal setting, the feedback, the continuous mentoring and coaching. Okay. So coaching is part of professional development as well. So my favorite definition is coaching is when a leader addresses performance objectives and helps us unleash the potential within a direct report. So maximizing and being the best version of themselves that they can be. Very powerful in that statement, right? And we as leaders, we as supervisors have that honor, if you will, right? Of that ability to help them and help them shape who they're going to be as professionals and build those experiences for them. So definitely coaching can help with adapting behavior as well, helping with a career plan, developing skills, increasing positivity, and setting goals. A lot of people look at coaching sometimes as you're lacking something, so you need a coach to help you. That's not necessarily the case. It could also help to continue to map out that path. So it's not just because you're trying to compensate for something. It could also help you build on a lot of things that you already know and maybe carve out your path and help you with that. So I personally always include professional development in my staff's goals when we do annual evaluations, because it shows that I am investing in them, and I'm also want the organization to invest in them, and they feel supported, right? So we want you to continue to grow. So do check your organization's professional development policies. Some organizations have some don't. Some are very generous with them. So make sure you're always encouraging your staff to use those professional development dollars and that benefit at your organization. And by adding them to the goals, you're helping them be conscious and intentional about the type of workshops or professional development experiences they're looking for. Okay. And set realistic goals. Don't overestimate. So now we're going to talk about, I'm going to share my screen again. So there are many coaching models, but there's a model, I really like this one. It's a model that it's very simple and direct. It's called the GROW model, which is really well placed to support work-based and career aspirational conversations. So this model asks the person to take a look at where they are now in relation to the goal they want to reach. Then it asks for options on how to get to the end result, acknowledging that there are very different paths and that they will reach that goal. But it helps them see where they're at, where they want to go, and possible options, right? And it's helping set a time frame and accountability, and also their commitment to the goal. So this is a very self-motivating approach. So it doesn't put that responsibility on the supervisor to help their staff member grow, but it puts it back on the staff member to create a plan for them. Okay, so try it out. Again, some of us already do this. We don't really think about it in this way, or maybe carved out some of these steps, but always encourage your staff to plan and think where they want to go. Right? Ask that question, what's your 3-year plan, right? They want to learn a skill set. Some people want to start learning about business development. Some people want to learn about budgeting. Some people want to learn about research, whatever the case may be. Some people want to start working on another country, whatever that is. And this is a good approach to go ahead and use for that. It is also then good with a situational leadership to use this as a tool. So comparing the degree of direction needed versus a degree of support a staff member might need. as a means to assess the style of interaction that you need to adopt situation by situation. So based on the task that you're giving the staff person, are they in the supporting role? Are they in the coaching role? Are they in the delegating phase? Or are you in the directing phase with them? Okay. We talked about a lot. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any thoughts or comments? No, it was a lot of talking today, not a lot of coursework. It's a balance. It picks up again tomorrow. But just know the importance of honestly having that professional development piece, help staff learn to be intentional and set that as priorities also for themselves, and make sure that we have the time as managers to create that space for us to also grow professionally and have our own goals, right? Don't shove us to the side. We also have aspirations, we have goals and things that we want to meet and reach as well. So in the chat, if you can give me a word or phrase that describes how you feel. How I feel is awesome, Felix. I feel enlightened. I love it. Empowered, informed. I feel like you're growing. That's a great one. Empowered, overwhelmed. So much work to do. Oh my God. Don't get discouraged, Deborah. Take one thing at a time. It could mean like a lot, especially if you have a team that or a staff member and you have that is going through a lot and you're growing pains in an organization or a team. It could feel overwhelming, but don't. Take one thing at a time. First, have a check on yourself, where you're at, what you want to do, right? Put that mask on first, and then you can put the mask on everybody else. All right. Perfect. I love it. Yeah, and this again is scratching the surface on a lot of things that we have been doing. We just didn't know they had a term or a model, or putting it all together so that we can see how everything builds on one another. But don't feel overwhelmed. Just take one thing at a time. Like I said, put that mask on you first. Make sure you're good. You have your emotions checked. You have your objectives and your goals in check. And then you can start setting that plan for your team. You can start delegating. You can start seeing what you need and what they need from you. Okay. Awesome. Yes, excited and encouraged. I love that. So I know we've covered a lot of things in those last 5 days, and we have 3 more days to go. But is there a conversation that we're not having yet that you're eager to explore? We want to make sure that we're covering as much as possible. So is there a conversation that you feel that we haven't talked about yet, but you're really eager to talk about? Go ahead, Deborah.
So we have talked about it, but I'm wondering if you can, or if perhaps more resources on self-evaluation could be provided. The SWOT analysis is there. You've the list of the, I'm sorry, I forget the names, but the theory where the different skills and the personality elements.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there are more resources you have for self-evaluation.
Yeah, I will pull some other things up for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the ones we chose for this course, the most like simple and very straightforward, because like anything, there's like a lot of models. So is there something in particular you're looking for?
No, I like that they were straightforward and practical. I guess I'm looking for something I can use to sort of kick off because,
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay, great. All right, let me see if there's something else that may be a good introductory piece to then lay the groundwork for that. Okay, cool, I can do that. Susie?
I'm loving all the opportunities for examples. So it would be any situational discussions where it's like, this happened, how did I deal with this, or how would you deal with this? I think there's a real richness in learning from each other and the difficult situations that we've navigated.
So that's perfect, because that's what we'll be doing on the last day. On day 7, you're gonna have homework to come back on the last day with a middle-sized type of problem or situation that you're experiencing. And then we're gonna get in groups and kind of coach each other and help each other through that. So we're gonna put all this that we're learning into practice. And we're gonna revisit Jane's case study now that we have all these tools in our toolbox. So we'll definitely do that. And then, yeah, if there's a topic that's happening as we're talking and you have an experience or a conversation, I know some of you, jump in and are sharing, please continue to do that, because that's honestly how we learn. A lot of us personally have not been through everything, many positives and negatives of supervising and managing, but if we share our experience collectively, we've probably seen quite a share of things. So that's why this course is so interactive, because it is about gaining those experiences. So thank you for that, Susie. All right, so let me take a quick look at the chat. Conflict management. Yes, we are going to be talking about working with working in difficult situations. So that is coming up. Again, it doesn't totally go into depth about anything in particular, but if you do have an example or you have something in particular you want to talk about, please bring it up and we will discuss it as a group, or you can, if it's very specific, you can chat with me after the class session and then we can have a one-on-one. Conflict management with other managers. Yeah, so it's all about also influencing without authority when you're also talking about your peers, and it's having a lot of open communication and expectations, right? And again, same thing, you're telling them what is a situation that happened that maybe created a reaction in you, or what is it that's triggering them to act a certain way. But definitely can bring that up on the last day so then we can know the full details, Joy, of that situation, so then we can better assess how to take next steps. Any thoughts on managing our interactions with colleagues where we over apologize for our actions? Stop apologizing. I read an article actually many years ago that women just tend to apologize. That's just our nature. That's how we're wired. So it takes a lot of conscious, and I'm one of those people. I apologize for everything. Oh, you're sick. I'm so sorry. And like, I mean it, right? So I have made a conscious effort to stop apologizing, to stop over apologizing, and remove that from my language. And it's intentional. It has to be intentional, Sumar. And it's so funny. I have 2 daughters. So I've made sure that they're not programmed to keep saying sorry for everything. So I tell them, sometimes they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I did that. And I'm like, you don't have to be sorry. You didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. You're fine. So teaching them as well, since they're little, to not over apologize. So it has to be intentional. Understanding the difference between urgent and important and prioritizing. Okay, we won't dive into that, but definitely the exercise that we did at the beginning, where we're actually just looking at things of how to, we'll circle back on the last day when we review everything, but we'll talk about tips for helping you prioritize. But again, it's carving out time for you to have that mental space to make your list and know what takes priority and also what can be delegated, right? A lot of the times we don't have time carved out to plan our work or to focus on how to structure it. So starting with setting that off based on your deadlines and things like that, you could definitely create that type of structure for you, okay? But it's carving out that time. It's super important. Communications with other managers and expectations, interactions at that level. It relates to conflict resolution and management. Yeah, we'll talk about embracing the challenges and challenging situations. And also we'll start a little bit tomorrow with build team dynamics. So we're going to go into building the team dynamic. But we'll definitely talk about some of these challenges. Replace my apologies with thank you for your patience and thanks for catching that. Yes, 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 yes. Perfect. You see, we learn from each other. That's what it's about. That's what it's definitely about. And again, as we go and we're covering a topic, if you want to jump in and give us your scenario or example, we're here to talk about it. Okay, definitely. So today, because I've kept you late so many days, we actually finished on time and a little early. So yay. So I'm giving you back 15 minutes to your day. So go take a break before you jump back in those emails or those phone calls. And for those of you late in your day, have your dinner, have a moment to transition back. And I just want to say thank you so much. And I'm so excited. We will continue with day 6 on building the team dynamic tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. So we will see you tomorrow. If you have a question, please feel free to stay after. But if not, we will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.